Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Christian, and today we are going to be talking about tools that they don't teach you in traditional computer science or information technology, software engineering majors in university or even in some boot camps, but that you should know if you're looking for either an entry-level position as a software engineer or adjacent software engineering job, or even as an intern. These tools would still be useful. So make sure to watch until the end, because all of these tools are going to be really important, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you should know for each of these specific tools so that you can better prepare yourself and increase your chances of getting your dream gig. Okay, so the first thing on the list is Jira. Now, what Jira does is it allows you to track bugs and to basically utilize the agile methodology in developing software. Now, a lot of companies use Jira, not all of them, but it's still it's a very well-known product, and it's used very frequently. So it's definitely a plus to be able to know how to use this. Now, Jira is something that can easily be learned. You can spend less than a day watching some YouTube tutorials on how to use Jira. If you're interested in learning more about Jira and you think that it would be a good idea for me to make a video on how to use it, I'm more than happy to do that. Just leave a comment, and if I get enough comments, then yeah, I'll make a video. But if you want to play around with Jira yourself, you can go to their website and create your own Scrum or Kanban board that you can use and test around with. It's even good for developing projects personally. So if you have a portfolio project that you're working on and you've noticed that it's kind of hard to track all of the features that you want to implement or bugs that you want to fix within your own project, you can set up a Kanban board that allows you to easily track those. I'd highly recommend it, and it would get you a head start, and it's definitely something that you could bring up in the interview process. So very important tool to know. All right, the second on the list is Git and GitHub. So some of you may have already learned how to use the basics of Git when you were in university or your boot camp. However, I'm not talking about being able to add some changes to the staging area and then make a commit and then push those changes to your remote repository on GitHub. That's basic stuff. Really, at this point, you should know how to be able to do that. However, I'm more referring to the more advanced usage of Git. So rebasing and squashing commits, resolving merge conflicts, Git hooks, and advanced branching strategies. So this is essential for team collaboration. It prevents code-based disruptions and future embarrassments. Trust me, I learned the hard way at my internship. So I would definitely learn how to use Git properly and do it now sooner than later, because it's going to bite you in the butt if you don't do it. And it's really not that hard to learn, and it will help you if you're not even an intern right now and you're just working on personal projects. It's going to help you with the development of personal projects, like creating new branches and coding on those branches and then merging those with your main branch. That's going to be something useful compared to just doing everything on one branch, where you can get your code base kind of corrupted easily, and it just becomes this huge mess, and you don't know how to deal with it. It's better to just learn everything early on about how to use Git efficiently and in a clean way. Okay, so third on the list is AWS or related deployment tools. So you probably have seen it if you're applying to jobs or internships, that a requirement is like cloud technologies, and this could be AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and even in some cases Heroku. So what to know: the basics of Elastic Containers, S3, and Lambda. That's specifically for AWS. I personally haven't used Microsoft Azure. It's really just a competitor to AWS, so you can if you know a little bit about either one, then maybe that's good. You can go with you can really go with either AWS or Azure or even Google Cloud. I would recommend learning one of those three. If you're just looking to deploy a personal project and you want to do it easily, then Heroku is a great choice. It's really easy to set up and configure, and they offer cheap plans. But personally, for me, I have experience with Heroku and AWS, and learning AWS was definitely there's a learning curve to it. But after you learn it, it's something that you're going to want to put on your resume, and it's something that's definitely going to come up in interviews. So they have a ton of resources once you sign up and create an AWS account. They have a ton of free resources for learning it. There's limitless things that you can watch on YouTube to help familiarize yourself. But start with creating a repository in ECR, and then maybe try using EC2, and that will kind of give you a good head start in using AWS. And you can use this to deploy a web application that you're working on. So if you have a personal project that's on your GitHub and you haven't deployed it, it's a web app that does X or Y, deploy it. It's going to be a lot more impressive. You can put a hyperlink on your resume to go to that project, and so employers can look at what you've done from a user's perspective. This is really valuable, and I think it's definitely essential in making yourself stand out and be a competitive applicant in today's job market. All right, next on the list is Docker. Now, Docker kind of goes hand in hand with using AWS. You don't always need it to use AWS, but it's definitely useful to know. So, like I mentioned earlier, say you want to deploy a web app, and you want to make this publicly available for any prospective employers or your friends, colleagues, or whatever to see, right? Basically, what you would want to do is you'd want to create a Docker image, which is, if you don't know what Docker is, it's a form of virtualization. So it's not a VM, but it's basically a container. And this allows basically you to run your application on any platform. And so you definitely want to learn more about Docker. Writing Docker files, very simple. It's just a small blueprint. It's short and sweet, easy to learn. I would definitely recommend it. It's something that you can put on your resume and bring up in interviews. And once again, it's gonna make you stand out and be a little bit more of a competitive applicant, give you that edge. Okay, next on the list is APIs, specifically REST APIs. So if you don't know what a REST API is at this point, you're definitely going to want to familiarize yourself. And a lot of job requirements nowadays are asking for familiarity with APIs and integrating APIs, specifically with web apps. So an example of this would be in an application that I made. I made this application called a financial calculator platform. Now, basically, what this features is API routes for the calculators. Now, it's a web app where you can go on, you can log in, and then you can put in some basically parameters inside of the calculator, and then get your result, right? However, there's an API route, which basically means that you can make an HTTPS request, and then it returns, depending on what you put in for the parameters, it returns the response as a JSON format. So now this isn't for personal use. If you're going in a web browser, you're not going to make an API request and then read the JSON format. That would just defeat the whole purpose of using a web app. However, if you're familiar with what REST APIs are, then this is going to be easier for you to understand. But it basically is for other software, other web apps even, to consume this API and basically display the results that it gets in the JSON format in its own meaningful way, or however it wants to work with the data that it's given. So now you don't necessarily need to create your own REST APIs. that's definitely a plus and will help you stand out. Definitely, especially if the job description states anything about APIs. However, if you're creating web apps, you do want to have some sort of API integration. Now, this could really mean anything. So, API integration could even be implementing Google's O authentication. So, if you've ever seen the login with Google option, that's an API that you can use with Google. Now, you just Google search Google OAuth API, and there's a ton of documentation to help you get set up and how to integrate that into your web application. Specifically with my financial calculators application, I use the Google OAuth, but I also use the Yahoo Finance API. And basically what this does is it makes a request to get previous historical financial data, and then use the response that it gets in JSON format to help determine what the calculation is going to be that the user ends up getting. So there's many different ways to either develop or integrate APIs, but this is definitely something that's going to be very valuable experience for you as a software engineer, and it's definitely going to come up in interviews. You're going to want to put that on your resume. I would say that this is probably one of the most important things that you should know if you haven't learned this already. All right, and then the last thing that I want to bring up is frameworks. So you're going to want to learn a modern framework specifically for web development. And this could really be anything. It could be React.js, it could be Flask, it could be Django, it could be Ruby on Rails. There's many different frameworks out there, and you can choose the one that uses the language that you're most familiar with, or whether you want more of a lightweight framework or more of an all-encompassing framework. It's really up to you about what you want to choose for your framework. Now, some of you, I still wanted to mention this because some of you might not have experience working with frameworks, or at least working with modern frameworks. And I think it's definitely important to know because you're most likely going to use these as in your career as a software engineer. Because specifically when I was in my undergraduate program at WGU, they taught us how to use the JavaFX framework to make a standalone desktop application in Java. Now, based off of what I've seen in job descriptions, this hasn't really been a sought after skill. So after I graduated, it was up to me to learn different frameworks. So I've learned React.js, I've learned Flask, I've learned Django, I've learned Java Spring. There's a lot of frameworks out there. You don't need to be a professional, but it's definitely useful to learn a framework. And an example that I could give you is I made this application using the Django framework. Now, Django is a model view controller framework. It's more of one of the all-encompassing frameworks, so it's not lightweight. It has a lot of different features. It basically streamlines the development process, makes it super easy. They have a solution for really anything. I really like using it personally. But say in university you're used to interacting directly with a relational database. So in order to get data, you have to make SQL statements that directly retrieve the data. Now, with Django, you have a framework that includes an ORM. Now, what ORM stands for is Object Relational Mapper, and this basically is another layer of abstraction that helps interact with the database, and it makes it a lot easier and quicker to develop applications. So I would heavily suggest learning or at least being familiar with those concepts and trying to challenge yourself by learning a new framework. All right, so that just about encompasses all of the recommendations that I have for you. So if you found this video helpful and insightful, please go ahead and leave a like and subscribe for more related content. I'm always open to suggestions as well, so if you have anything for me, please feel free to leave that in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.